My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfected and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind.
We actually have a guest speaker this morning. His name is Scott Smith. He's a very dear friend of mine, so I hope you enjoy him as much as I have. I believe he's a very gifted communicator, and he does a very good job from this stage. He's also one of Shadow Mountain's newest employees, effective immediately, so I'm sure you can ask him about that afterwards if you'd like. When Arnold and I were going through and beginning to develop the James series, we had Scott in mind to take one of the weeks and speak to you. The fortunate thing is he gets to kind of close out our series on James. And so, without further ado, here is Scott Smith.
Hey, what's up, gathering? You guys hear me all right? Everybody doing good? Yep, they're doing good. You doing good? Wonderful, great. All right, so I asked the guy with the video camera that I can go between these goalposts because I'm a walker-talker, so I'm going to be for everyone this morning, but I got my guidelines. Like Curtis said, my name is Scott. The one thing you need to know about me is that I'm married up. I have a very, very smoking hot wife who I love a lot. And I love it when she loves me, so I would point at her, but I don't want to get in trouble for pointing at her. But my wife is sitting in the back, and we have two awesome kids. Unlike Curtis, I don't have pictures of my kids, but none of my kids have 13 fingers, so I felt like if I came out and showed pics of my kids, you guys just saw a kid with 13 fingers, so like a normal kid is just kind of, whatever. So I figured I would not do that this morning, but I am really grateful to be with you guys, to be able to close out this series on James. You guys have spent the better part of a month or so diving into the Word of God by a book by a guy named James, who we know is the brother of Jesus. Now, we usually glaze over that, right? Like, I grew up in church. In fact, I went to a church very similar to Shadow Mountain Community Church. It had a school, the whole 9 yards, right? And so I have literally been where you are. So I understand what it's like to just go over these verses and these books of the Bible and glaze over the fact that a book of the Bible that pointed people to Jesus, not only pointed people to Jesus, but half of the entire book of James are commands for what to do in order to follow Jesus. And we glaze over this incredibly unique fact that it was written by his brother. Okay, now I don't know about you. So my brother, he lives in New Jersey, and years ago, we had a super honest conversation, and he looked at me as sincerely as he could, and he said, Scott, you are the most annoying person I have ever met in my entire life. I'm not even kidding. Yeah, you're laughing like, is that true? Yes, he actually said that to me. But to give you some context, just to back up a little bit so you understand why, when we were growing up, he liked to play this video game called Madden Football. Does anybody know what that is? Right, okay. So I don't really know much about video games and stuff, but my brother, he lived downstairs in the basement with his PlayStation, and he played this game all the time. And I remember I'd come down and say, Justin, hey man, let's go hang out, let's go play soccer, let's go run down the street, let's just go do something outdoors. And he would look at me and say, no man, we got a bye week this week for my team, and we're playing, I don't know what it was like, we're playing in Hawaii the week before, and so I'm going to give them a week off in Hawaii before so they can rest up to play the next team. And I literally remember looking at him and being like, hold on man, hold on. You're saying you want the electronic pixels inside of that little box by the TV to have a vacation in Hawaii? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it, but every now and then he would get me to play a game with him. And we used to play this football game, and I was just atrociously bad. And so he'd be up like 82 to nothing, right? And so we're sitting there. It's fourth quarter. There's like 3 minutes left in the game. And I just keep talking smack, dude, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. He was like, it is literally impossible for you to come back and score that many points to beat me. And I was like, dude, I know the codes. I know how to make this happen. I know football. You don't know. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to come back. And so I just keep running these plays. I'd keep throwing Hail Marys like every play. I had no strategy whatsoever, right? He'd pick it off. I'd say, doesn't matter. I'm still going to win. We get down to about 33 seconds left in the game. And I'm like, dude, I'm about to pull off this special play. It's going to blow your mind, and I'm going to win the game. And we come down, and we're sitting there playing, and it's just like 10, 9, 8, and I just got up and went, well, here it is, special play, boom, bam, and I just pressed the power button and turned the game off. And I was like, you didn't beat me. We never finished the game. We'll have to run it back. We'll have to run it back. And so that, for me, is why I know my brother probably called me the most annoying human being on the planet. And so it is not this thing to glaze over that the brother of Jesus devoted an entire book of the Bible to give the church, to give you and me now, thousands of years later, and sort of an instruction manual on what it means to follow God, right? And we've been diving into James, basically saying this, that the Christian life is a response to God's love. It's not just this ride you get on and it takes you to heaven, that the Christian life itself, faith, is belief in action. And we have that faith, we have that ability to respond to the gospel, to the love of God, because we have this anchor called Jesus. And see, I thought about this anchor thing, right? So when I was in here last week, I was looking at the stage, and obviously that's a massive anchor. And where I come from, I think of anchors as things that weigh you down. And so for me, there was kind of this negative understanding of why would we call Jesus this anchor, because other writers of the Newer Testament of the Bible do that. They say we have this anchor, Jesus, this hope for our soul. And then it clicked. See, an anchor doesn't weigh you down. An anchor actually sets you free, because an anchor makes you aware of where you need to be. Because if you look around, a lot of us, and we're all guilty of this sometimes, is a lot of us, we don't live intentionally, we just live. And you see a lot of people in our culture nowadays, and they're just drifting. They're just drifting because they have no compass. They have no direction. Really what it is they have no anchor. They have no hope. They have no hope in Jesus. And that's a hope that you and I, as followers of Christ, as the church, it's not just this building that you come and sit in. The church is a movement you choose to be a part of. It's the people of Jesus who follow Jesus, to point people to Jesus. It's this hope that we have in our hearts that we are called to give away to the people we meet, whether it's at school, whether it's at our jobs, whether it's in our relationships outside of church and home, inside of church and home. We are called to give this hope away. And so today we're going to look at just a few verses that James brings up in chapter 4. If you have your Bible, you can turn there. It's James chapter 4. We're going to be in verses 13 through 15. And I know they pass around these actual Bibles, and I'm going to get in a big time trouble for saying this, but let's be honest, I'm not your high school pastor, and I'm the one who has the mic right now, so I'm just going to say this as it is. If you need one of those, go for it. But if you want to look on your phone at the Bible app, that's not going to hurt my feelings, quite frankly. I don't even care if you want to tweet while I'm talking, as long as it's tweeting about things I'm talking about. Don't be tweeting about things that I'm not talking about. But I may drop some things on you this morning that you just want to share with the world, so I'm not going to be offended if you do that. But we're going to dive right in, because James, essentially, I mean, if you read as we've been going through together over the last month in this book of James, I mean, James is just dropping truth bombs. I mean, he's literally just coming out the gate, right? In James, just saying, hey, look, when life is tough, you should be happy about it. And you're like, wait, hold on, dude, what did you just say? Like, count it all joy when you suffer, because God is doing a work in you. Here's one of those tweetable things, right? God's work in you is how God works through you. And you're going to see that in just a minute when I share a little bit about myself with you, in hopes that it would impact you in a way that would spark this passion to take this hope and give it away. And so James, he drops it like it's hot in chapter 4, verses 13 through 15, right? He's just kind of railing, right? He's just giving it to the church. This is what's up. This is what it means to follow Jesus. He's not making suggestions. He's making commands. And he says this in verse 13. He says, come now. Really what that means when he says come now, he says, come on. It's like one of those Kevin Hart looks where he's like, come on. And he just stares at you. That's basically what James is doing. Come on now. You who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town, and we will spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. This is harsh. What is your life? What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Journey back with me to 1999. Most of you were not even born. So still journey back with me, right? So in 1999, I was sitting in your seat, and life was really good for me. I'm just going to say that in all humility, right? Life was really good for me when I was a teenager in high school. I dated a girl. She was popular, not as popular as me, but what are you going to do? Yeah, we're not still together, so I can talk smack about her like that. It's totally cool. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing with you guys. Had this relationship with this girl. Everything was going great. I was in the band, right? So it's really cool. Like, people love it when you're able to play the guitar, and for some reason they let me do that. And I was coming up in high school. I was a freshman, and I was always more of a bigger athletic kid. So even when I was 14 years old, I was like 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, played soccer, baseball, basketball. But my mom never let me play football. My mom never let me play football because she was afraid I was going to get hurt, right? Like any good mom, right? Like, we have a son. He literally, last night, I just watched him roll off the bed onto the floor, and instead of running over to see how he was, I laughed. But that's because I'm a dad, and I just think, dude, toughen up, man. Ice it up. You'll be all right. And, of course, my wife was just like, he fell off the bed. I'm like, yeah, it was pretty funny. He landed good, though. He was cool. And so my mom never let me play football, but I did all these other things. And there was a friend of mine, his name was Martin. And Martin used to ask my mom every single week, will you let Scott play football? Will you let Scott play football? Will you let Scott play football? And she just, it was a broken record. And it was almost, this thing, it just became funny to her that your friends just constantly want to get you to play football. And the answer is no. Like, she thought it was hilarious that they would all ask, and she every time would say no, and she just was not budging. And I didn't really want to play football. I didn't care. All my friends played other sports, and I was doing other things. And I remember one day in high school, I don't know if they do this now, but they had a sports picture day, right? And for some reason, whoever organizes this, I have no idea why they do it this way, but they get every single athlete in the school to dress up in their uniform at one time and try and corral them all together and one at a time take pictures of them. I have no idea why they invite that type of stress into their life, but they do. And so it was school athlete teams picture day. And so I'm hanging out with my soccer friends over here, and we're just talking. And I hear it before I see it, right? I hear the clickle of cleats, right, coming down the thing. And there's the football team coming down the hill to get their picture taken. Now, that may not sound all that cool, but to a 14-year-old boy, I'm watching that come down the hill, and I'm thinking this. What are they surrounded by? What is this? And you know what it was? Cheerleaders. That's what they were surrounded by. And in that moment, I went home after pictures, and I looked at my mom, and I said, hey, Mom, I would like to play football. And so she let me. She actually let me do it. And so I entered a weight training program, and we started doing what we were doing, and we were training. I went to football camp. My first time at football camp, I didn't know what positions were. I didn't know what anything was. We were doing this team huddle. I was the last person to run in because I was putting away one of those bags. And everybody's in the huddle. Hey, come on, Scott. They were so encouraging, right? I had no idea what I was doing. They knew it. I'm just running along. Boom. Bite it. Just right in front of everybody, face first. And I'm thinking, this football thing is just not working out. But in reality, after about a year, it started to work out really well. So much that I started to get recruited by Division I college football teams. And so all these coaches would come to my school, and they would have lunch with me, and they would tell me how awesome their schools were and how they wanted me to come play football for them in a few years when I graduated high school. So we started winning all these weightlifting competitions and all these things, and God just seemed to be steamrolling this thing, and my future seemed to be pretty clearly laid out, that I was going to play on ESPN, and that was going to be my life, and we were going to see what happened from there. And I also had a best friend. His name was Brandon, and I called Brandon Bot. I don't know why I called him Bot. I just did. That's literally the explanation of why I called him Bot. So when you hear me say Bot and you think, why did he call him that? I have no idea, but I did. And so Bot was my best friend, and he was that type of best friend. I don't know if you guys have this, but you get in a situation, and you don't have to actually speak to one another to communicate. You just give them a look, and they know exactly what you're thinking, and you know exactly what they're thinking. And we were like this. And he played ball with me, and we trained together every single day. And life was good. Life was good. Everything was positive. I was going to play Division I college football. My girlfriend was on board. My best friend was going to be there with me. We had our plans. And one day, we decided it was summer. It was the day before 4th of July. And Bot had just got a brand new car. And he wanted to wash it, because he wanted to go kick it to this girl who lived down the street. And so he wanted to wash his car, and literally, this is how smooth we were. This was his plan to kick it to this girl. Her name was Julie. His plan was, I'm not going to tell her I'm coming to her house. I'm going to go eat chili cheese hot dogs. Then I'm going to go wash my car. And after I'm done washing my car, I'm going to drive over, I'm going to park it in her driveway and just stand out by it and be like, look at my car and smell my hot dog breath. That was his plan. No joke, that was his plan, to kick it to this girl. And so naturally, like any good friend, I said, yeah, man, let's do it. And I had some work to do at the house, so they dropped me off at my house. I had to mow the grass at my house. I'll never forget, I had to mow the grass. And so they went and they had their hot dogs. And Bot came back and picked me up. He picked me up, and we start going down the road. And the thing you need to know about Bot's new car is it was one of those, it had an aftermarket stereo system, right? So, you know, like when you get your car, if you want like a nice CD and speakers and stuff. So it had one of those. The problem is he bought the car used, and so he didn't know the code to turn it on. So he had this $1,000 speaker system in his car that didn't work. And so we had no music. So we got into this thing where anytime we would ride in his car, we would sing. So we'd sit in there blaring Red Hot Chili Peppers and singing whatever we could at the top of our lungs, right? Just yelling like just morons out this car because we had no music and we wanted to keep ourselves entertained. And so we're riding along. And the thing that you need to know, that life was good, but life was all about me. And I would venture to say that I'm not alone in this kind of thinking, and I venture to say that some of you have probably experienced what I'm about to share, and that was this. So although that I was plugged into church, and I was playing the game, and I was looking shiny on the outside, I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. I was just living a life that was all about me, and so I was into the things that you don't need me to reel. You see them on TV. It's 2016. You know what's up. And so when a young man like myself gets a lot of esteem and a lot of praise and a lot of offerings in his life, he leans into that in a way that ends up becoming destructive on the inside, but still looks pretty on the outside. But I was struggling with that. I was struggling with this challenge, with this tension, which was, I know God, and I know God has a plan, but man, I really like life being all about me. And we're driving down the road. We had just washed the car, and we're taking the back road, and we're on our way to this girl's house. And we're having this conversation. And I looked at him, and I said, Bot, man, we need to get right. We need to get right with God. And you know what I'm talking about, man. We're doing this, and this, and it's just not honoring God, man. It's not what God wants us to do. We need to start following Jesus. We need to get on that right path. Because this one, as fun as it seems at times, just seems to always end up in loneliness and despair. And I don't want that for my life. I want bigger for my life than for it to be all about me. So, man, we need to get right with God. And he looks at me like any best friend would, who had my back at all times. And he looked at me and he said, hey, man, I'm with you. I get it. And I'm there. Let's get to working on that. But let's take our time. let's take our time. Because right now life is fun. And we got all the time in the world to get right with God. Those were the last words Bot ever spoke. Those were the last words that ever came out of his mouth. Because just a few minutes later, we would get in a car accident that would change our lives. He would lose his. And mine would be changed forever. As I sat there on July 3rd, 1999, in a ditch, watching my best friend die in front of me. Asking God why. Football was gone. I broke my back in the process. That was done. Depression paved the way for my life for years until I finally found my way back to God. But I realized something that day that James just told us in chapter 4. He says this, "What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes." Guys, you need to know this, and you need to know this so you can show this. You need to let this seep into every bit of your soul. You're not just a body with a soul. You're a soul with a body, and you are called to take this anchor of hope. That's what we are called to do as the church, to take this anchor of hope, to rip it out of our chest and give it away to people we come in contact with, because here's what I know for sure. Today is the only cash you have in the bank. Tomorrow is not promised. Hell is real, and eternity is a very, very long time. And when you step out these doors, there are people in your community. There are people in your schools. There are people in your lives right now who this hope that you have, this beating inside of your chest, this following Jesus that consumes your life, they need that. They need that. And we don't know how long we're going to have to give it away. Now is always the right time to follow Jesus. Now is always the right time to point people to Jesus, because Jesus is that hope. When we're sitting at home sometimes and life is dark and someone has hurt us and our family situation is tougher than we would like it to be, and things that have been done to us are creeping up on us, and we are full of sadness and loneliness, and we don't feel like there's any hope, and we don't feel like anybody loves us. We don't feel like anybody wants to be around us. We don't feel like we measure up. Jesus says, "I gave everything to be with you." We have that when all is lost, and this world needs that. And you and I, we're the ones who Jesus said, you're going to take that message to the world. Because see, you all have a story too. You all have a story too, and maybe it's a messy one. Maybe it's like mine. Maybe it's a messy one. But you know what I've learned over time is that God can take your mess and make it a message. God can take your mess and make it a message. Because he wants to reach people through your life. That's why he works on you. God works on you to work through you. And this is what I've learned over time as I've interacted with more people all over the country. I've had an opportunity to be with people all over the country, inside and outside of church. And this is what I've learned. My life is the light that God uses to display his love to the world. Your life is the light God uses to display his love to the world, because not everybody has this anchor. In fact, most people don't. Look it up, Google it. Most people don't have that anchor, but you do. You do, and they need it. They need it badly because they're just drifting with no hope, and you and I are that hope. We have that hope. We can give it away, and we're called to do that. And that was my prayer as I spent time this week thinking about what to deliver to you guys. Because just to let you in on a little secret, like most speakers, they just want to come up here, be funny, right? Take you on a story, just kind of drop it like it's hot, like I just did, right? And everybody's like, oh my gosh, did he seriously just talk about his best friend dying in a car accident? Yes, I did. It's real. It's life. It happened. But God is taking the mess and he's making it a message. And the reason I share that with you is because I prayed for you all. Every single seat in this room that I prayed. And this was my prayer. That it wouldn't be that I would leave and you think, oh man, that guy was funny. Oh, that guy had a cool story. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, he has a beard too. Look, it looks like everybody has a beard. Oh, no. This was my prayer for you, right? I know that God loves you. And I know that God gave everything to be with you. And I know that you were made on purpose, with a purpose, for a purpose. And some of you just needed to hear that today. Some of you needed to hear that time is fleeting and it's not waiting on you. And life is not promised another day. And for some of you, that hope I'm talking about, that anchor I'm talking about, you're sitting there thinking, man, I'm drifting too, and I don't have that anchor. And maybe today is the day that you start thinking a little differently about that. And maybe today is the day that you choose to have that anchor in your life and you say, look, I'm following Jesus. And maybe for others of us in the room, we just needed to know. We just needed to know that tomorrow's not promised. And that person in my life who I love, that person in my life who means the world to me, I don't think they know Jesus. And I can't let the sun go down on that. Maybe some of us, we need to break out the phone after church and we need to text a friend and let them know we love them. Maybe it was as simple as that. Maybe we need to go home and look at mom and dad or someone in our life, man, a brother or sister, and just say, hey, man, I love you. Maybe we need to make that relationship right? Like that relationship that's been broken, maybe that relationship that we think is severed and can never come back again, maybe we need to make that first step. Maybe we need to embrace that humility, drop that wall, and just step in and say, look, life is too short for me to hold on to this. Life is too short and God's grace is too sufficient. And maybe that's what you needed, and that's what I prayed. That this message at some level would reach you, that would not scare you. James doesn't write these words. He doesn't say your life is a mist to scare you. He says them so that they would spark you, so that it would light this fire, that when you leave this place, you know that you matter to God, and so does everyone else. So we can take this anchor of hope and start ripping it out of our chest and give it away to everybody we come in contact with who needs the very hope that you and I have. That's my prayer for you guys. I am so grateful to be able to come and share my story with you. And I'd be honored if you'd let me just pray for you this morning. And we're going to continue to worship together. So let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word. Because it's not just some old book written thousands of years ago that has nothing to do with our lives. It's your truth. It's your light. It's how you guide our steps. So God, I ask specifically, Lord, there may be someone in this room who this anchor, God, that I'm talking about, this anchor that we spent the last month or so talking about that we have, Lord, in you, Jesus. Maybe there's someone who they just don't have that anchor, and today is the day that they're going to choose to follow you. God, I pray you would give them peace and comfort to know that you're working on them, to know that you love them, to know that if they need somebody to talk to, there are pastors and leaders in this room who they can find after church, and they know will receive them in love and be there to help them and pray for them and encourage them. And maybe others of us, God, we just needed that reminder that when we step out that door, tomorrow is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised. And maybe we just needed to be reminded that your love is better than our love, because sometimes our love holds us back. Because sometimes our love doesn't allow us to just take those steps and leap into relationships to share your light with people. And so we ask, God, that you would invade us, that you would invade our space, that you would penetrate our hearts so that you would do this work in us so that we can give it away, to know that those people outside the walls of this church and maybe inside the walls of this church who maybe we have severed relationships with, that you would mend that and that you would make a way. God, just like you made a way with your son Jesus, that you would make a way for us, that you would give us favor and opportunities to share that light with those we come in contact with, to know that the purpose you created us for was to give love away, and know that lives are changed when love is given away. So God, I ask that you would spark that in us this morning. For each and every person here, it doesn't matter what age or stage or what's going on in our lives, what we have done or what's been done to us, that you've given each of us a story, and you can take our mess and make it a message. And so any fear that we may have of sharing that with the world, that you would take that from us and tell us and remind us and encourage us and give us peace and comfort us as you send us to take that story and give it away, so that other people would have a story, so then they could give it away, and we would see more and more people come to know you. Because God, you know more than anyone, because you created us. That the young people sitting in this room are not the next generation, they're the now generation. They're the generation where when they walk out the doors, everything is at their fingertips and communication is at their fingertips, and the opportunities are right there to give love away. So I ask that you give them strength today. Those who need to pick up the phone and make that phone call. Those that need to walk across the way and talk to that person. Those that need to go home and have a conversation with mom and dad or brother or sister or family member. Those who need to send a quick text just to tell somebody they love them. Those who need to take that step across the way to mend that relationship. God, I pray that you would give them all strength and passion to do that. Because in the end, God, all that matters is you and people. So God, we thank you for that truth. I ask that it would motivate us, that it would inspire us, that it would challenge us, that it would invade us, and ultimately, God, it would flow through us as you work in us. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Let's worship together some more.